You know him as the crystal ball meteorologist, Joe Lundberg. And Joe, before we get into next week, a much different pattern coming. Let's take a look at what we were talking about this time last week.
All right. Three things really pop out, and the first one to me is this one, Florida. You're going to go from hot weather and dry and needing rain to all of a sudden you're going to get a lot of it starting next week. There's going to be a noticeable pattern change. We'll show you how that's all going to unfold. Overall, a lot less severe weather. It's not going to be zero, but we think overall a less active pattern next week because of how things is set up. And the heat is going to be expanding in the west. You're going to see some more records, I think, fall in some places over the next several days.
I'm having a lot of trouble.
Well, I guess Florida getting inundated right now. There was a lot less severe weather to deal with this week. And certainly the heat's been prevalent in the Southwest and the Southern Rockies this week, Joe.
They have all come to fruition as we laid out for you last Thursday. And as we go forward to next week, the biggest thing I think that's going to take front and center stage is this one right here, a heat wave that is going to blister the area from the plain states all the way to the mid-Atlantic. We're talking about day after day after day of 90-degree heat. Some places maybe triple-digit heat with humidity and no rain. Speaking of rain, you're not going to be as wet in Florida next week. There will be some rain for South Texas. The question is how much, and that may be related to how things play out in the tropics.
Yeah, let's talk about the heat, Joe. Why are we going to see that heat? Well, I mean, it's plain on the map, that big upper level high. This is the first time we've seen this pattern this year.
Yeah, I mean, the upper level ridge burning up to this point in time has been centered over Mexico. That's why it's been hot and dry there for the spring and the early part of the summer season. This week it's been working its way up into the Rockies. That's why you've seen the heat there. But next week it centers itself here over the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes, and that's going to pump this heat ridge and bring the heat. So St. Louis, Kansas City, Chicago, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Nashville, all the way to Washington, D.C. and New York City, you're going to be in the heat. Even Boston, I think you're going to have a couple of days of some pretty gruesome heat. Very dry, hot, and no rain across this area. However, underneath this, you've got an easterly flow, and you're going to have to keep an eye on the Bay of Campeche because it looks like something is going to try to develop there and head for South Texas or at least eastern Mexico.
You know, every time I see an upper high this time of the year, you always look underneath the belly for tropical development. We're already seeing showers and thunderstorms getting going across the Bay of Campeche, well, not in the Mexico. And when you take a look at where we would see development, Joe, these are the areas that we're concerned about next week.
Yeah, in close development. This is the area that we're keeping an eye on now. That system may develop, but it goes out to sea pretty quickly. But keep an eye on here, and particularly this area, the Bay of Campeche. It looks like this moisture comes up from the south and southeast and then works its way northwestward. I wouldn't be surprised if we have tropical, at least a tropical depression, if not a tropical storm there about a week from now.